Okay, good afternoon, class. So today I'll be talking about capital punishment. So capital punishment is basically the legally authorized killing of a person who commits a certain crime. And right now in America, there are 31 states that do legally use capital punishment and 19 states that do not. And so today I'll be talking about how capital punishment negatively impacts these jurisdictions and states that do still enlist capital punishment. So the first point I have would be that death row inmates require a lot more funds to maintain within the state. 2, capital punishment creates a strain between the citizens and states, causing trust issues. And 3, there are other alternatives such as life without parole for these death row inmates. So the reason why death row inmates do cost a lot more money than regular inmates that are just there would be because, according to Peter A. Collins and Matthew J. Hickman, which are 2 criminal justice professors at Seattle University, they claim that capital cases do cost 3.2 times more than regular cases. The reason being is the amount of times that these inmates have to appear in court, not just for their sentencing, but for their many appeals that they have to do in order to reduce their sentence or get rid of these punishments. And these costs are imposed by the time, depending on the type of death. So the most common type of capital punishment would be lethal injection, which most states do, but there are 4 other different types that some states may impose, such as death by hanging, firing squad, gas chambers, or electrocution. And not only is it expensive for the families, for the government, but it's also expensive for the families because the families must also spend money on hiring lawyers for the constant defense of the inmate that is in prison or facing these capital punishments. And lastly, it causes all of us to be affected as well by the amount of tax money that we have to pay to fund these institutions and jails. For the second reason it creates a strain is because capital punishment typically victimizes low-income families and minorities, as most people will say it's anti-minority, anti-poor. The reason why is because, according to the ACLU, in October of 2002, Black victims that were killed by, murdered by white defendants, only about 12 of these white defendants were sent to capital punishment and killed through whatever reason, whereas 178 Black inmates who killed a white person were sent to their deaths. And low-income inmates do not have the money to support themselves, like I stated previously, hence not having the right defense, causing them to be more prone to succumb to the death sentence. And as of August 2001, the New Jersey Supreme Court did release a report stating that it was more likely that most states would go forward with capital punishment if the victim was white. And lastly, the execution of innocent people may be at risk. According to Dan Brook, a freelance instructor in political science, 4% of death row inmates that were actually killed because of their quote-unquote crimes were actually perceived as innocent in the future as more DNA information came up as we are advancing in time. And lastly, life without parole would be a better alternative instead of the senseless killing of these inmates. The reason why is because life without parole is typically the same swift punishment as you would be killing them, because these inmates would not be released back into the world. As I stated, life without parole, they are unable to parole and come back. And concluding, this is why capital punishment would be a negative impact to society. Thank you.